Mr. President, a couple of weeks ago, I came to the floor to talk about where the Republicans are. And this is now, effectively, the House of Representatives has adjourned. The national legislature has adjourned. And I want everyone to understand what's going on here. These are work periods. These yellow days are work periods. So August is off. Everyone's supposed to be home. But what they did was they left early. So here, all these are crossed out. They didn't show up. And then they didn't show up for any of these days. That's fine. But then they decided to unexpectedly cancel this week, and then this week, and then this week, and then this week. And now we are at the point where if you're a member of the House of Representatives, over the last 3 months, for every day that you show up for work, you get 7 days off. And the rest of the federal workforce is either furloughed at home and not getting their paycheck, or they're considered an accepted employee, which is essentially a designation you get if the work you do is so essential for safety that you have to work anyway. And so here you have the members of the House of Representatives getting paid not to show up. And then you have the rest of the federal workforce having to show up and not get paid. I've lived through several shutdowns, unfortunately, but none like this. Usually both parties are in town for a start. Usually both parties are in town. And I get the play that Speaker Johnson made at the outset. It's a pretty common play. It's considered a jam job, which is essentially, here's this bill, now we're out of town, it's the only thing you can pass or not pass, and so you're now under pressure to either pass it or not pass it. Very common thing to do. They jammed us. They did the same thing in March, and it worked. But it didn't work this time. And then the Speaker of the House, instead of saying, gosh, we should probably start a negotiation and try to figure out how to keep the lights on in the United States government, keep people from losing their paychecks, he just said, well, tough. I'm going to adjourn the House of Representatives. And I want everyone to understand how ahistorical this is. This is already a very light schedule, right? Just objectively speaking, people don't get schedules like this before you do all the cross-offs, right? This is even a light schedule compared to normal House schedules. This guy is not that interested in legislating, and I just also want to make one other specific point. It's not as though there is nothing else to do. We haven't passed a national defense authorization. We haven't passed the rest of the appropriations bills. We haven't passed a Water Resources Development Act. We haven't done oversight. And what happens is when you stop doing your work, it's just like homework. It piles up. It piles up, and then you run out of time at the end of the year. And the House of Representatives, these people who spend so much money and time and put their family and their friends and their coworkers through a bunch of pain to achieve being a member of Congress and having this little pin and having the honorable in front of your name. And then they just said, you know what? I don't think I need to show up at all. Sometimes it can be hard for people to understand what politicians in Washington are arguing about. But this is actually pretty simple. Open enrollment starts on Saturday, and about 24 million Americans, just so happens most of them are in states that supported Donald Trump, are about to face roughly a doubling of their health care costs. And for some people, it'll be like a 30% increase, and some people it'll be a 70% increase, and for some people it'll be like a threefold increase in their health care costs. And in raw dollar, the percentage is a big deal, but the raw dollars is kind of what matters, right? Because people don't have an extra $600 or $700 that they can kind of like wring savings out of. You don't get to go, oh, you know what, I'd like a $12,000 raise to cover this. That's not available to them, not in this economy. And there's not $12,000 less that you can spend somewhere. And in the middle of this, even though the United States Department of Agriculture, in their initial shutdown guidance, said specifically, we've got $5 billion in contingency funds, and those resources are available to keep people getting their nutritional assistance, their SNAP benefits. And then abruptly, like 4 or 5 days ago, they just like changed their guidance. This is something that Trump did in his first term during a shutdown, is use those contingency funds to prevent Americans from starving. To prevent Americans from starving. And I guess I just don't understand why anybody thinks this should be a point of leverage. Like half of the roughly 40 million people who receive SNAP benefits are working poor because we have decided nationally we're not going to raise the minimum wage and we're not going to support the labor movement enough so that when people work 40 hours a week or 60 hours a week or 100 hours a week, they still can't even afford to put food on their table. And so we have these SNAP benefits to make up for our policy failure. And 40 million people need it. 20 million people, about 20 million people of them, actually have jobs. And most of the rest of them are the elderly or the disabled. And I don't know what the hell has come of this country when the President of the United States, who is in charge of this particular question, has said, as a point of leverage against Democrats, I'm going to cause millions of Americans to not have enough food on their table. I remain flabbergasted that the national legislature has basically adjourned under Mike Johnson's leadership. He's not even trying anymore because he thinks it increases his leverage. Costs are about to double for tens of millions of Americans on the healthcare side. Electricity is going up at double the inflation rate. Vegetables are up 39%. Coffee is up 30 to 40%. And now there won't be enough food. I implore everyone on every side of the aisle to just sit down and negotiate this. Under Biden and under Leader Schumer, we just didn't have shutdowns. We just didn't. And that you could actually make a valid criticism that under Democratic leadership, we conceded too much. We conceded too many policies to the minority party, but we did. Because we understood that in order to enact an appropriations bill, even a continuing resolution, you need 4 corners. What does that mean? Majority leader, minority leader in the House. Speaker, minority leader in the House. Majority leader, minority leader in the Senate. So let's get the House back in town. Let's turn on these SNAP benefits. Let's fix this ACA problem. And let's turn the federal government's lights on. I yield the floor.